A big hello and a very warm welcome to a special show right here on ET Now. I'm joined by James Quincey, the global CEO of Coca-Cola, and this is an ET Now exclusive. Thank you so much for joining us, James Quincey. Truly a pleasure having you on ET Now, and welcome to India.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, I've seen you really partying it up at the Akash Ambani wedding over the last few days. Was it your first big fat Indian wedding?
It was certainly perhaps the most entertaining one. It was great to be here, to be with my friends and to enjoy the wedding. It wasn't my first, but it was certainly very special.
You most definitely looked like you were having a good time. I saw you with the red turban and even shaking a leg, the Indian style. So well done.
Thank you.
So, you, James, have finished about 2 years approximately as CEO, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to be also chairman come April.
Yes, correct.
So many congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that. But having said that, if I asked you to look back at your journey over the last 2 years, what do you think the key challenges were for Coke when you took over, and how much of that have you managed to address?
Yeah, I think, look, as I took over, we were coming off a phase where we had been reinvesting in the sparkling business, refranchising our bottlers. We'd sold off the bottlers we owned in the US and parts of Europe and other parts of the world. And we were able to complete the transition to really focus on being a total beverage company. And I think that ability to both invest in sparkling and expand our portfolio through innovation and new marketing into other categories has allowed us to accelerate our growth rate. So our revenue growth has picked up. The growth rate has picked up over the last few years, and that's improved our bottom line as well. So I think really we came off a kind of sort of a restructuring phase where we weren't growing as fast as we wanted to, and by being a total beverage company, we've been able to accelerate the growth of the business.
So, this total beverage company, I understand, is your new mantra. But I know that you've said time and time again that you do not want to focus on foods, and you want to stick to being a total beverage company. But given the fact that we're seeing a slowdown in the global economy, there are multiple challenges that the company will face given the categories that it is naturally aligned to. Is there a possibility in the future that you will possibly look at diversification with foods, like your rival has?
Well, I mean, the way I put it is never say never.
Okay.
In other words, I don't rule things out, but the most likely thing is we'll do more beverages. The reality is that beverages, in terms of global growth, are still growing faster than food, and we still have lots of opportunities to gain share in not just in sparkling, but to enter lots of other categories and continue to grow there. I mean, we may be the biggest global beverage company,
sure.
But we are still only just scratching the surface of what's possible in beverages, which means the most likely next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that we're going to do are going to be in beverages rather than enter new categories that don't fit as well into our business system.
Having said that, you say that it's that you're not looking at other categories that would fit into your business, but let's look at your very fancy $5.1 billion acquisition in Costa Coffee. So while I understand that is your strategy to enter the hot beverages sector, it is also most definitely an entry into the restaurant business. And I know a lot of analysts have questioned you on the fact that, whether it's sensible for Coca-Cola to enter the restaurant business, and because that's a completely different ballgame. Is that a strategic route? And of course, the former CEO of PepsiCo, Indra Nooyi, stating that they will never ever enter the restaurant business because of its own limitations. Your view on that?
Yeah, look, I think Costa Coffee, one has to stand back and think about what is the coffee industry and what's it made up and why is it so synergistic with what we already have. The biggest bit of the coffee industry, once you look at the ready-to-drink coffee, that's a small piece, and we're the biggest, we're the global leaders in that. Then there's the coffee you buy to drink at home, that's another piece. But the biggest piece of the coffee industry is actually coffee sold in someone else's stores, of which coffee shops are a small part of it. So for us, when we look at Costa, we see Costa and the stores, the coffee shops form a part of building the brand and the experience. And they really, in a way, aren't restaurants. I mean, they're coffee shops. It's a different thing. But the biggest part of the market is within someone else's stores. And what we see with Costa is they have a brand, a supply chain, a business system, and a platform of vending machines and beans and machines that will allow us to be a better beverage partner to many customers. We obviously provide beverages for lots and lots of different channels and outlets, including all sorts of restaurants and cafes. And by being able to combine cold drinks with a variety of different ways of delivering hot drinks, we can actually be a better provider of beverages to those millions and millions of outlets around the world. And actually, that's the biggest bit of the coffee industry. And it'll allow us to be very synergistic with our business system that already calls on these outlets, already provides technical support for the fountain machines, the soda fountains that exist in a lot of these places. And so actually we can bring the two together. We can bring hot and cold together and be a better total beverage company.
And how are, your vendors who you supply to looking at, Costa Coffee now being part of your portfolio, given that a lot of your vendors already serve coffee, for instance, McDonald's?
Yeah, a lot of them do have coffee. I mean, obviously, we've only just acquired it a couple of months ago. We're going through the process of the transition and working out how to bring it in. But a lot of the coffee shops, a lot of the cafes and restaurants around the world don't have a great coffee offering, and there are lots of channels that would like to order coffee, like to sell coffee. So you've got things like gas service stations, cinemas, etc., where they would prefer a much more premium offering. And these vending machines, for example, or the beans and machines, allow them to have a more powerful offering. So there's a lot of outlets in the world where they would like to have a more compelling branded coffee offering, and I think that's what we can provide with Costa.
James, although over the last 2 years you've navigated the Coca-Cola ship, in terms of, revenues, growth, even restructuring, company's vision and focus, you've had a pretty heavy start in 2019, given the fact that, post your fourth quarter results just in Feb, the Coca-Cola stock took a big dive. The fact that you're sticking to your guns by giving a rather weak guidance for 2019.
Well, I don't think it's a weak guidance, because I think you have to take it in two parts.
Okay.
And I think what you're seeing in 2019 is another year of really strong underlying operating performance. We'll have good top-line growth, a lot of leverage in the P&L, such that operating income is growing double digits in 2019 off a very strong growth of operating income in 2018. What's happening in 2019 is we're being hit by foreign exchange. Whilst we report everything in US dollars, we are predominantly an international operation. We're in over 200 countries, and as that gets converted into US dollars, there was an abrupt strengthening of the US dollar in the late summer last year that affected our results in the back half of last year, and then it's going to flow through into this year. I think that's where the disconnect came in the marketplace, was on expectations around foreign exchange.
And how is 2019 looking for you? Worse than 2018?
When we gave our guidance, we commented that we were a little more cautious about the macroeconomic outlook for 2019. Not dissimilar from a lot of the forecasts that are coming out from the international institutions, the IMF, and other places, seeing reducing forecasts for expectations for 2019. There is a bit of a weird situation in the global economy. When you look at the forecasts and you look at the headline numbers, you see a softening. Things on the ground seem to be still relatively robust. As we commented in some of our calls, we started 2019 with a good start, a good foot forward. So I think it's just mainly, it's actually, we don't know how 2019 will end up. We've adopted a little more of a cautious stance versus 2018, but our focus is on executing our plan in the marketplace. We can control only what we can control, and we're going to go after that, and we'll see how it ends up.
How challenging is the carbonated beverage space right now in terms of, consumption, in terms of its growth, in terms of, consumer behavior in the West, in advanced markets, juxtaposed with emerging markets?
Well, the sparkling beverage industry, even leaving aside some of the other categories that have sparkling parts of them, continues to grow. I mean, it grew volumetrically, it grew in retail dollars last year, and the growth of retail dollars has been a sustained trend. So I think there's sometimes a bit of a difference between the narrative and what's actually happening with the consumers, because you're actually seeing them engage with the sparkling category. particularly as we and others have invested in reformulating the products to reduce the sugar, or innovating in zero sugar products and smaller packages. So actually you see growth coming back into the category because it's resonating more with consumers. Last year, Coca-Cola Zero Sugar had not just its best year, but its fastest year of growth last year. So you're seeing some vitality come back in, and particularly for American observers of our industry, the fact that Diet Coke started to stabilize and do well, and we brought innovation to it, I think made people reconsider maybe this is a category that's regaining some momentum as it adjusts to new consumer tastes.
So are you saying that the narrative around the whole carbonated beverage space is much more exaggerated and is not really that much of a danger than it actually is made out to be?
I think what we can say is over the last few years, the sparkling industry has been growing revenue about 3%. So that would represent a deceleration from what is current trends. And I think certainly what we see in our business, and then obviously as we look back and see what the industry is doing, we don't see that deceleration. Actually, as we invest to make it relevant for consumers, we see ourselves sustaining the 3% in round numbers globally in terms of revenue growth. Now, that's the beverage industry. There's more innovation, and actually the total industry is growing faster as new categories emerge, but we see there's going to be continued growth in sparkling.
So in 2018, we saw Coca-Cola globally, do a lot more variants, a lot more flavors. Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. Even in India, we saw, a mammoth 18 new variants of flavors launched in 2018. So that's really aggressive. My question is rather fundamental. When you launch so many variants and flavors, there is an added cost. Are the returns justifying this kind of extension?
I think over the long run, the innovation ultimately pays out. If you look at some of the countries around the world which have the largest and most developed beverage industries, they are never one category. They are always composed of multiple categories and indeed multiple subcategories. So I think, when you look at it, consumers will want choice. They're not going to just drink the same thing all day long, whatever that happens to be. So they want choice. So we need to continue innovation to test what is it that most resonates with consumers. Now, for sure, of the 18 things that were launched last year, it would be a miracle if they all worked.
Of course.
Of course. So that's not the expectation. The question is, are we finding a path to creating some brands and some categories that really resonate with consumers, that really have staying power, and making sure that the ones that don't work, we take them out and they don't clog up the system and being inefficient. That way, we can actually generate the returns that are necessary.
James, one of the bolder moves you made, once you took over as CEO, was the fact that you absolutely got rid of close to 700, what you call zombie SKUs. Take me through what your thinking was and why you decided to get rid of these SKUs, which is, 700 is quite a bit. And what is your opinion of what will be the big trends in terms of beverage drinking going forward?
Sure. Every marketing organization loves inventing new things, loves coming up with new ideas, loves testing them in the marketplace, and we're no different. But in the end, if you want to continue to be able to put new things in the marketplace, you've got to take out the things that don't work. Otherwise, as we call them, the zombie brands or the zombie SKUs that haven't worked, they clog up the distribution system and make it very inefficient. They fill the stores with bottles that don't sell, which is bad news for the customer. So we have a rigorous process of identifying what is colloquially being called the zombie SKUs and taking them out. Because those 700 SKUs were 0.00 something% of our sales. They weren't selling, and that's bad for us, it's bad for the customer, and it's not something the consumer wants. So it's not the sexiest part of the marketing industry, but it's super important that it gets done to free up space for everything else. And that's why we've had such a focus on it. It absolutely has to go hand in hand with the innovation process. Otherwise, everything grinds to a halt. And then as you look around the world at what's growing, actually different sort of categories are growing in different places. You see categories, as I said, sparkling being revitalized. You see other categories experimenting with sparkling variants, so flavored waters, sparkling flavored waters. You see a lot of growth in ready-to-drink coffee, an energy drink. So there's a lot of interest out there in new and different categories.
Yeah, but what is your pet project? What are you betting on?
What's my pet project is ultimately that you cannot decide from Atlanta what everyone is going to drink in the world. Okay. That's the thing that I've decided I can't do. What I really need to do is find the right local managers who are in touch with consumers around the world, that have their good understanding of what's going on locally, so they can launch the local innovation that's necessary for the country, or look across the world to what their colleagues are doing and bring the innovation that's worked somewhere else and bring it into that marketplace. If we can bring together those two ideas, local innovation that's really connecting, I mean, we've done a lot of innovation on fruit drinks here in India with local Indian fruits, but also bring in ideas from around the world. That's what can make the Coca-Cola system stronger and more successful.
Wow, so you're saying this is new, this didn't happen before?
It happened before, but perhaps we weren't as directive in making sure that the local markets understood that was their role. When I started, we reduced the size of the head office. We were much clearer on the local country managers are more empowered. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at our history as the Coca-Cola company, we spent over 100 years with one product and almost one SKU, one bottle. And so really the strategy was, here's the idea, try and get it everywhere. But as we become a total beverage company, we need to be much more sensitive and in tune with what are the trends and tastes that are really going to resonate in each of the countries. I mean, the fruits that are available in India are different to the fruits that are available in Latin America or Africa. So that only the local team can really work out how to make the most of those ideas.
Fair point. You've been very aggressive with acquisitions, and I believe, is that going to be also your mantra going forward? Because you've launched Global Ventures, which is like completely tuned into acquisitions, and you've made some significant ones, of Costa, of course, being the biggest, but you also have Innocent and Monster. So what are we going to see in 2019? Coca-Cola aggressively going and sweeping off large differentiated beverage companies?
Certainly M&A, bolt-on M&A is an important part of our business strategy, because if we can find something that's working in a country or region and move it somewhere else, that's very advantageous for us.
Which categories though?
But I think M&A is a bit like buses. You can wait a long time and then all of a sudden 3 turn up at the same time and then you wait a long time again. So I don't think the rate at which we've been doing acquisition necessarily says we're going to do the same amount in 2019. It's about the right strategy, it's about the right price and about the right opportunity. And it doesn't tend to be a straight line. So I don't think we should project our level of activity in 2018 into 2019.
Fair point, but you are obviously scouting.
Of course.
Yeah. So when you are scouting, what categories are you scouting at? What are you looking to, let's say, diversify or expand into or acquire?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we're in every category somewhere in the world.
Sure.
So what we're looking for is not necessarily the latest new category, because we've probably already got something somewhere in that category.
Sure.
What we're looking for is there a brand out there that is succeeding in a country or region that we believe could become global? And if we can find that brand, then it's probably at a size that makes sense for us to be able to invest in it, because we can take it to many more countries, something that the current entrepreneur could never do successfully. And those are the sort of things we look for. So we more look for brands and companies that are in a certain stage of growth in the categories where we see gaps in that region that we can take to a bigger scale, rather than saying I'm after this category rather than this category.
Okay. Next question is very interesting, given that we're sitting in India. Cannabis, marijuana, and CBD, all of these are legal in some parts of the US, also picking up momentum. Of course, in India, they're all banned. But the fact of the matter is, these are all very exciting and new areas for consumers, for sure. I'm sure for companies as well. Is that a possible area of expansion?
Certainly not at the moment. The way we look at it, whether it's those or any other ingredients, is we kind of look at it through 3 simple filters. Is it legal? That's the first starting point.
It is.
Debatably in 99% of countries, no.
Yeah, sure.
Even in the US, it's not fully clear
Fair point.
whether it's federally approved or not. So first point is legal. Second point, is it safe? There are some things that are legal but aren't necessarily safe. And is it consumable? In the end of the day, we want something that you can have a drink of every day of the week. And so when we look about new ingredients, we want it to meet those three criteria. And at the moment, those ingredients don't cross those three thresholds. So it's not anytime soon.
How is the US-China trade fight impacting, your company, given that it's such a big global behemoth?
Yeah, I mean, we're global, but actually it's an incredibly local business. So 99% of everything that's consumed in a country was made in that country. So the Cokes in China were made in China, and the Cokes in the US were made in the US. So when there is trade friction between major parts of the world or several countries, it doesn't have that much of a direct impact on us because we're very local, same way that all the Cokes in India are made in India. Sure. So the impact is very indirect in the sense that if it ultimately suppresses consumer demand, that's going to flow through to the consumer industry. But we're not kind of injected in the major trade dynamics in the sense of one supply chain or another, because we're a very local business physically, even though the brands are often very global.
What about consumption trends? And if you could talk about consumption trends with respect to markets. For instance, let me start with emerging markets. Are emerging markets actually delivering to you, as expectation, or do you think they've softened over the last couple of years?
Emerging markets definitely softened. I mean, when the financial crisis came through, actually, they were relatively robust in terms of growth in the years after the financial crisis, but they then began to soften after, let's say, 2012. So I think there was a great softening in some of the emerging markets over the last number of years.
Including India?
Yeah, including, well, India had part of the softening. India were some of the implementations of some of the national policies that were necessary, but of course created some disruption.
Sure.
But you saw some softening in the emerging market, and then they came back a bit in 2018. So I think they came down, they came improving in 2018. How it's going to turn out in 2019 is not clear. There are clearly some of them where some macroeconomic adjustments are going on, like Argentina and Turkey and, sure. And some other parts of the world. So it's not quite clear. Hopefully the trend will start to move upwards. It's very rarely a straight line with the emerging markets, but hopefully it's going to be a kind of a wavy line that's heading upwards rather than just being stable. So there definitely was some softening, but got a bit better.
Sure. And how would you rate saturated markets or advanced markets?
I think they've been much more stable. Now, having said that, again, the growth of the consumer products industry pre-financial crisis was higher than it has been post-financial crisis, but it's been a much more stable growth rate across the developed world, and so I think that is relatively continuous and ongoing, the growth rate there.
My question really stems from the fact that given that companies like you, who are investing so much in terms of product innovation, product extensions, does it equal or is it greater than consumer demand and consumption?
I think there's more innovation going on. In a way, the post-financial crisis environment of more access and lower cost capital has encouraged, as intended through the macro policy of making capital cheaper, seen more people enter lots of different industries, including the food and beverage industry. So there has been more attempts at innovation. I think as the emerging markets have generated more middle class, they've been looking for more choice. So I think there is a wave of innovation going on that is greater in aggregate, if you like, than the growth of the whole industry. So I think that is going on, and that's absolutely something that we're clear that we need to participate and drive forward.
Talk to me about India. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 25% of Coca-Cola's India's revenue came on the back of new launches. That's pretty significant. How are you looking at the this great momentum of new launches that the Indian management has taken on.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've done a great job here with the Indian team in getting growth back into the business. As you said, innovation has been a key part of driving it forward. Innovation on some of the sparkling brands like Thumbs Up, all the way through into the innovation new categories, drawing in local Indian fruits and making drinks based on them, launching them into the marketplace, but not just using the fruits, but also investing heavily down into the supply chain to improve the ability of the farmers to increase their productivity, to sell fruit for better prices, to manage the wastage through the supply chains.
Would it be right for me to say that about close to 85% of your business comes from outside of the US?
Yeah, so not quite 80% of our profits come from outside of the US, so yes.
Wow, okay. So, and after the US, your biggest contributor would be?
Well, so the US is our biggest market. The next biggest market is Mexico and China. India at the moment is our sixth biggest volumetric market. The local team are closing in on the fifth place that may come later this year.
Who are they displacing?
They would have to overtake Japan.
Wow, okay. On that note, thank you so much, James. All the very best for your continued effort and innings with the Coca-Cola company, and hopefully you'll transform it into something that is healthy and robust. Thanks very much for speaking to ET Now.
Thank you. Thank you.